Hello everybody, I hope you're keeping well. If I'm looking a bit cold, it's because I am. I'm in my studio, as you can see, which is actually part of our garage that's been converted. And there's not a lot of heating out here, so it's also Scotland in the middle of winter, so it's not particularly warm. But the subject of this video is neuro fatigue, which I know from reading posts on Facebook is a big problem for stroke and brain injury survivors. Before we talk about neurofatigue in a little bit more detail, I just want you to consider a few facts. And one of those facts is that our brains comprise around about 2% of our body weight. However, it uses about 20 to 25% of our energy. I'm talking for somebody who hasn't had a stroke or a brain injury. So 2% of our body weight and 20 to 25% of our energy needs. And it also holds around about 25% of our cholesterol, and the brain needs cholesterol to work effectively. So when we talk about neurofatigue, in a healthy person, we're talking about an organ, the brain, that uses nearly a quarter of our energy reserves, our energy requirements. And when that brain is damaged, it's actually got to work much harder. So that 25% of our energy needs will increase. So it's perfectly possible with somebody who's had a stroke or has a brain injury that their brain needs or is using up 40%, 45% or more of their energy requirements. So it's going to get tired, it's going to get fatigued. And I used to think that the word fatigue and the word tiredness were synonymous. They were synonyms, they were interchangeable. I'm feeling a bit fatigued, I'm feeling a bit tired. I'm feeling very fatigued, I'm feeling very tired. They were just interchangeable. But they're not. I now know that tiredness is one thing and fatigue is another. So tiredness will mean I can maybe go and have a lie down for half an hour, and then I'll be refreshed, I'll be re-energized, I'll be recharged. Fatigue, on the other hand, is a far more sinister beast. And if I'm fatigued, then lying down for half an hour or an hour probably won't change a great deal. I need a longer period of rest. And that's with physical fatigue. If it's neurofatigue, which I'd never experienced at all prior to my stroke, I had a problem with tiredness, obviously, and feeling a bit fatigued and all the rest of it, particularly as a jobbing musician, as a working drummer. Driving home at 3 o'clock in the morning after having played for 3 hours, and you get a bit tired, you get a bit fatigued. But neurofatigue was something I'd never ever experienced. So typically what happens then with neurofatigue, and I'll say this to any friends or family members of brain injury survivors who are watching this: imagine the worst hangover that you've ever had. I'm assuming that you drink, but imagine the worst hangover that you've ever had. You know that hangover, well, it's only been told to me, I've never experienced it myself, obviously, but that hangover that you get where you can't really move and you wake up and you're in bed and the light's coming through the window, and oh boy, it's like somebody's got a saw on your head and they're sawing through the top of your head. It's horrible. It really is horrible. Your throat's dry, your brain dead, you can't really think, you can't really function, you try and talk. It's like trying to swim through treacle or through crude oil. It's monumentally hard work. Getting out of bed, going to the bathroom and getting back again is a huge, huge effort. That is very much, for me anyway, what neurofatigue is like. And it's that kind of analogy, the worst hangover that you've ever had, that I use to explain to folk what neurofatigue is like. And my experience is it could be like that 24/7 for several days. And until I learnt how to pace myself, that's what I experienced. I'd have these peaks of energy, I'd do stuff, and I'd do too much, and I'd do it for too long, poof, and then I'd crash. And then the neurofatigue would kick in, maybe a day, maybe two, maybe three, maybe longer. And it was like the worst hangover that you've ever had for days on end. Not nice. So just think about that when you're trying to communicate with your loved one. This is for friends and family members. Just try to think about that. Just imagine in your head, if you can, that they are suffering from the worst hangover that they've ever had. And if you can imagine what that's like, maybe treat them accordingly, be a bit gentle, be a bit slow with them, be a bit quiet with them. Because in here, yeah, stuff's happening, but really, really slowly. If we think about our brains and what our brains do for a little bit, we might answer the question as to, well, why are they using so much energy? 20 to 25% and more in the case of a survivor, brain injury survivor. Why is the brain using so much energy? Well, if you think about it, it does everything. There's stuff that the brain does that we don't even think about. It's part of the brain function called the autonomic nervous system, and it's stuff that happens automatically that we don't think about. Breathing, swallowing, our reflexes, our heart rate, our blood pressure, all of these things that happen when we're asleep, is the easiest way to think about it. Stuff that is keeping us alive when we're asleep. That's all basically what the autonomic nervous system does. So even when we're sleeping, our brain, parts of it anyway, are still active and still whirring away and still doing stuff. And if I put my hand up and my hand down, I have to send a signal from my brain all the way down my arm that triggers the muscles to work in a coordinated way, so they come up smoothly and they go down smoothly. That's all being controlled by the brain. My arm is not doing anything in and of itself. It's merely responding to commands that my brain has given it. So that is triggered and controlled by my brain. We've only got one. Got a heart, you've got one heart, well, we can bypass it, we can transplant it. We've got two lungs, we can actually survive on one, but we can actually do a lung transplant. We've only got one liver, but guess what? That can be transplanted, etc., etc. But if you have damage to the brain, that's it. You have to live with it, deal with it, try as much as you can to improve how it functions, but it's just the one. So the fatigue is a big issue because a stroke is brain damage. So any kind of brain injury, whether that is a traumatic brain injury, somebody's hit us over the head, or an acquired brain injury, like a stroke, it's just happened, brain injury will cause neurofatigue, probably without question, in most cases, simply because the brain is doing so much, it's now damaged, and it's got to do what it was doing before, but got to work much harder to do it because it's been compromised, it's been damaged. And I can feel myself starting to get a bit fatigued now with just the effort of doing this video for a few minutes. And again, for friends and family, I wasn't aware of this when it was happening to me. So if it happens to your loved one, they probably don't know either. But my wife noticed that when I was fatigued, I would shut down. Now, she used to think, when she would be talking to me and I would shut down, she used to think that I was maybe sulking. I wasn't a sulker prior to my brain injury, but she thought, oh, maybe the strokes brought on some kind of sulk pattern. But she used to think I was sulking. She used to think maybe that I was fed up with her. She'd done something that I was upset and I couldn't tell her about it, so I just kind of shut down. But she used to think all kinds of things were going on simply because of my lack of response. And she started nicknaming it a brain freeze because I would just shut down. It's almost like somebody had hit the pause button on my remote control and nothing was coming out and nothing was seemingly going in. And I don't remember these situations, so I plainly was shut down. And I think from research that I've done, what happens is your brain kind of gets full of all the stimulus coming in, and that might be light, that might be sound, that might be lots of people conversing. You might have walked into a cafe and it's really busy and there's lots of noise in there. There might be music playing, and it's just whatever's going on, the stimulus to your brain, all the sensory input to your brain is too much, and it copes and it copes and it copes and it copes and it copes, and then it gets to a point where it just says, I can't do it. And then you, the brain injury survivor, are gone. But people around you are thinking, oh, he's got a bit of a sulk on, oh, he's not interested. He's tuned out of the conversation yet again for whatever reason. And the reason isn't they haven't chosen to do that. It's just happened because they are overstimulated. Their brains have had too much stimulation. So I've now learnt, when I'm in a busy place, I learned maybe if I'm listening to my wife and we're in a busy place, if I close my eyes, that cuts out all the visual input, and it's then easier for me to focus on what she's saying. Yes, it does look a bit weird. Why is this woman talking to this bloke and he's got his eyes shut? Hey, that's their problem. This is just my way of coping with it. So you learn ways to cope. And sometimes I go into a place and it's like, no, I can't cope with this. Now, I can't. This coffee place is too busy. This restaurant's too busy. This shop is too busy. Whatever, I can't cope with it. And I leave. But my wife understands that's just me, and I'll say to her, I'll go back and sit in the car and I'll wait for you to. And I get in the car, shut the door, and it's like, peace, bliss. So for friends and family members, just watch for that with your loved one. It's just, they're not ignoring you, their brain has been overstimulated and has now been fatigued. And it may take them some time to recover from that, depending on how badly they have been fatigued. It may take several hours, it may take a day, it may take longer. But you and they will learn over time to manage their fatigue levels, and hopefully some kind of early warning system. My wife's noticed that my eyes, for example, start flicking around a bit. My nystagmus that I had after my brain surgery comes back a bit, and my eyes will flick. And it's like, for her, that's aha, warning sign. Andy, we're ending the conversation here, just take it easy and rest. Now for me, what this neuro fatigue leads to is what I call my zombie days. So if I have overdone it, if I have got fatigued, then I will tend to have zombie days afterwards, which is, as I said earlier, like the worst hangover you've ever had. For me internally, it's just, I can't function, I don't really know what's going on. I'm clumsy, I knock things over, my memory goes to pot, I can walk from one room to another and then think, what am I was doing something, what was I doing? And I can't for the life of me remember what it was. Just turn into some kind of brain dead zombie, effectively. And there's no telling how long that will last for. So the other thing for friends and family is recognizing the neuro fatigue. That's one thing, But then secondly, don't really have any expectations as to how long that will last, because it might only last a few hours, it might last for a few days. So one of the things I learned over time was if I had an appointment coming up, a medical appointment or whatever, then I would leave 2 days beforehand blank and not do very much in those 2 days, so that I had sufficient energy to get through the appointment, the meal with one of my sons, whatever it was. And similarly, I would leave a couple of days after the event, whatever the event happened to be, again where I wouldn't do very much, to give myself a chance to recover. So basically, for me, if there was an event, an appointment, a meal out, whatever, I would have to leave 5 days. I'd leave 2 days beforehand, the event itself, and 2 days afterwards. That would be a 5-day chunk of my life, just simply to get through that one event. So it may be that for friends and family who are watching this, for your loved one, it may be that's how you have to start managing and help them manage their time. The days of doing something today, something tomorrow, something the next day might be over in the short term. That might come back over time. It's got better for me, but it is nowhere near back to how I was. There's no recovery there as such. I have made improvements, but I'm not back to how I was. So we have to make sure that we arrange our diary accordingly. So I hope that's been useful for friends and family members watching, just to give you a little bit of an insight into what this neuro fatigue thing is. And if you'd like to subscribe to the channel, it doesn't cost anything. Just click on the subscribe icon below and you'll be alerted. If you click on notification as well, you'll be alerted to new videos as and when they get posted. So thank you very much for watching from a very cold Scotland here, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care now. Bye bye.